And turn your hymn books to page 410. 410. She's so sweet to trust in Jesus. We'll sing the first, second, and the last verse.
Let me get these out of your way.
Thank you. Yes. Tis so sweet to trust in Jesus, to take him at his word, just to rest upon his promise, just to know that saith the Lord. Jesus, Jesus, how I trust him, how I prove him more and more. Jesus, Jesus, precious Jesus, to trust him more. Oh, how sweet to trust in Jesus, just to trust his cleansing blood, just in simple faith to plunge me now to healing, cleansing flow. Jesus, Jesus, how I trust him, how I proved him more and more. Jesus, Jesus, precious Jesus, oh, for grace to trust him more. I'm so glad I learned to trust him, precious Jesus, Savior, friend, and I know that he is with me, will be with me till the end. Jesus, Jesus, how I trust him, how I proved him more and more. Jesus, Jesus, precious Jesus, oh, for grace to trust him more. Where did Zane go? All right, let's start our next song. Let me go to it. Well, there he is. That's fine. I was needing you, but that's fine. We'll sing the next song. 198. 198. Born to Die. We'll sing the first, second, last verse too. Maybe this would be actually a good last song, but that's okay.
Go for it. You've already announced it. Go for it.
198. Yes. On the night Christ was born, just before break of morn, stars in the sky were fading, o'er the place where he lay fell a shadow cold and gray of the cross that would humble a king, born to die upon Calvary. Jesus suffered my sins to forgive, born to die upon Calvary. He was wounded that I might live. Jesus knew when he came, he would suffer in shame. He could feel every pain and sorrow, but he wept paradise. With his blood he paid the price. My redemption to Jesus I owe. Born to die upon Calvary, Jesus suffered my sins to forgive. Born to die upon Calvary, he was wounded that I might live. Dearest Lord, evermore may thy cross I adore, as I follow the path to Calvary. Like death I protect, my intention I forsake, all my will I surrender to thee. Born to die upon Calvary, Jesus suffered my sins to forgive. Born to die upon Calvary, he was wounded that I might live. You may be seated.
All right, now as our ushers getting ready for our special, we'll have our special announcements. I want to remind you that next Sunday is going to be, what's that? Easter. Next Sunday is Easter service. There will be no afternoon service on that day. I have our morning service. It will be special service. Go ahead and be sure you're inviting people. And then no afternoon service to follow. Go ahead and spend that time with your families. As the ushers coming on down, don't forget, next week, maybe this will alternate because of the special service. But if not, be ready. Read Genesis chapter 9 as we're continuing through the book of Genesis for our Bible morning visitor right before Sunday school. And for special music today will be Savannah and Megan on the violins. All right. Mr. Mark, would you please ask a blessing on our offering this morning?
Dear Heavenly Father, we just thank you that we can
as James is coming forward. I've heard good report from Pastor and Mom as they're visiting with the grandkids, excited, and just the different things they've gotten to do. And I'm sure we'll all be quite happy when they make their return. I know I will.
All right, turn your hymn books to 564, 564, in the Sweet By and By. Please stand up for our last song. We'll sing all 3 verses. There's a land that is fairer than day, and by faith we can see it afar, for the Father is over the way, to prepare us a dwelling place there, in the sweet by and by, we shall meet on that beautiful shore, in the sweet by and by, we shall meet on that beautiful shore, we shall sing on that beautiful shore, a melodious songs of the blessed, and our spirit shall sorrow no more, not a sign nor a blessings of rest, in the sweet by and by, we shall meet on that beautiful shore, in the sweet by and by, we shall meet on that beautiful shore. To our bountiful Father above, we will offer our tribute of praise, for the glorious gift of His love, and the blessings that hallow our days, in the sweet by and by, we shall meet on that beautiful shore, in the sweet by and by, we shall meet on that beautiful shore. All right, sing.
All right, now Megan and Savannah will bring us our special music. This bookmark just fell out of my Bible. We'll see where that one was later. All right. Good morning. I must admit, I'm quite excited this morning to go ahead and preach. Wait until this turns green. Still not turning green. The battery's on it. It's not turning green. Are my batteries dead? Can you give me different batteries? All right, while they're fixing that, I want to go ahead and say thank you to Brother Roland for his message Sunday school. I have thoroughly enjoyed every lesson he's brought us at different occasions in Sunday school. If you've missed any of those, if you haven't made it for the Sunday school service before, I would encourage you to seek out on our YouTube page or through Sermon Audio. And if you need help finding where to locate those, anyone from the sound room can help you with that. Go ahead and take a listen for yourselves. Those are the type of lessons that I know take a lot. One of these batteries was backwards. We got it. Thank you. I know that's the type of message that takes a lot of time to study. I'm sure it's the type where you have a mountain of notes afterwards, and then it's your task of streamlining that of what you're then going to present. Is that about how it goes, brother? Yeah. And a lot of that stuff is everything you glean from your study, and especially when it's looking to other religions and mindsets, and then accumulating all that knowledge and then streamlining to us is a lot of work. So thank you for that. And like I said, I encourage you to go ahead and seek that out. Also, let's say with Pastor Way, I was communicating with him back and forth, and yesterday was the spring game for the Ohio State Buckeyes. Now, all that means is they had a glorified practice in front of a bunch of fans and practice against each other. That is something, of course, we communicate back and forth. If we were together and if we time permitted, we would have watched it together and enjoyed it together. Something that we both get to bond over, enjoy in that side of football. I say that to say this: they revealed their championship rings from this past championship, and I'm only telling this because something I've never seen before. It was very active with this team past last year. There was a revival over the college, and many of the players were using their voices and the attention given to turn around and give glory to Jesus and share their testimonies. And they put inside their championship ring on the inside, I'll show it to anyone who wants to see it later, an inscription of the cross of Calvary. Is inside their the team championship. I've never seen a team do something like that. And I look at it and say, wonderful. I that was just something that I really enjoyed seeing, and I hope these men continue to throughout their life still live for the Lord. And that was just something I took full enjoyment in seeing. And of course, it was an empty cross, and that's just something that I wanted to share with you guys. Something that as soon as I saw that, I had to send to Jacob a post that get Dad to see this, because that's the way he's going to see it if I tell somebody else to share it with him. So looking forward to just enjoying that with him. All right, go ahead and take in your Bibles this morning. Now we're going to be back in chapter 8 of Judges. I was here a little while ago when I filled in and got to preach a morning and afternoon service, and I had warned you that we were probably going to be back in here because I had at least 2 more messages to preach out this chapter, and that's exactly what I'm going to do today. We're going to have a message this morning, and then I'll preach a second message that continues the chapter this afternoon. So if you feel like I miss anything this morning or highlight some sort of points of chapter, then maybe it's going to be addressed in this afternoon service. And as I was studying along, it's trying to keep these on different papers. It can be somewhat difficult. You're trying to focus. You say, no, I'm just sitting on this first message. I'm putting it all on paper. I'm gathering my notes, and sometimes they have a way of bleeding. All of a sudden, in the same chapter, it comes over to you, and I say, that's why I had 2 separate pieces of paper, and I was just trying to work it all out. But we're going to be in the book of Judges for the majority of the day here in chapter 8. Now I'm going to read you, this is just about where we left off before, just to give you a little refresher reminder. Gideon, he is pursued after the kings of the Midianites, and he first, in our morning message of last time I brought this, we had the folks who had an issue with the fact that they weren't invited to be part of the battle. And we saw how Gideon used wisdom and used poise to negate that problem, and used his that wisdom and elegance to not turn it into a whole bigger incident that it needed to be. And then next we looked at the two towns that as he was pursuing after these kings of the Midianites, and all he wished from them was some bread for his men who had been pursuing, and they were tired. And both these towns, they refused to grant them this simple wish of feeding them. And these two towns, they were punished for this reason. He continued on his quest to overtake and seek out these kings. He fought against them. He now has them. All that has happened. Gideon has had a busy week going on before him, and it's still not at an end as we find him in chapter 8 in verse 18. Let me turn the page. All right. This is Gideon addressing the two kings now that the judgment has been passed on those two cities. In verse 18, Then said he unto Zebah and Zalmunna, What manner of men were they whom ye slew at Tabor? And they answered, As thou art, so were they. Each one resembled the children of a king. And he said, They were my brethren, even the sons of my mother. As the Lord liveth, if ye have saved them alive, I would not slay you. And he said unto Jether, his firstborn, Up and slay them. But the youth drew not his sword, for he feared, because he was yet a youth. Then Zebah and Zalmunna said, Rise thou and fall upon us, for as the man is, so is his strength. And Gideon arose and slew Zebah and Zalmunna, and took away the ornaments that were on their camels' necks. Then the men of Israel said unto Gideon, Roll thou over us, both thou and thy son's son also, for thou hast delivered us from the hand of Midian. And Gideon said unto them, I will not roll over you, neither shall my son roll over you. The Lord shall roll over you. Let's pray. Lord, we come before you this morning. I just ask and pray that I thank you for just this message and this chance to look at this moment into time of how you were working through people's lives and you gave them these opportunities. Lord, I ask and pray that this would be a benefit to us, that we would take in our own lives, our own personal walk as we try and follow you. I ask and pray that as the message I bring, it would be something that is clear, something that is able from the oldest and the youngest here to be able to take the words and to understand and to and grasp whatever the points that I'm putting across. I just ask and pray that you would bless as we seek to learn from your scripture here this morning. In Jesus' name I pray, amen. All right. So we have here the kings of the Midianites. They're taken. One named Zebah and one Zalmunna. And if you remember earlier in the chapter, the princes of these men, presumably their sons, were already taken in, and they were also executed at just not long before this. And I know Z names were quite popular in the Midianites, as we find a number of them happen to have Z names. So I just, as someone who also has a Z name, I just took notice of that. Other than that, that means nothing. But these two men, these two kings, and now they're saved here. And I've just wrote for you the entire text we're going to go through, and now we're going to go verse by verse and break it down here. And first we have to highlight this point of their execution. Now it is important that we all get on the same page that this is a deserved execution. Now that's something that throughout time, thoughts and opinions on it have varied, even now up until modern days, where it seems now it's quite the rare thing. I believe that the Bible makes clear that there are offenses that qualify for a death of somebody who is now in prison for those crimes, and death is a fitting reward for those ills. So now let's go back earlier in the chapter, and we'll just take a quick review so we're all on the same page of that this is a deserved execution. If you go back to chapter 6, before all this, before Gideon's life was changed, before he became a judge of Israel, in chapter 6 and verses 1 in verses 1 through 7, I'll read. And the children of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord delivered them in the hand of Midian 7 years. And the hand of Midian prevailed against Israel, and because of the Midianites, the children of Israel made them the dens which are in the mountains, and the caves, and the strongholds. And so it was when Israel had sown that the Midianites came up, and the Amalekites and the children of East even they came up against them. And they encamped against them, and destroyed the increase of the earth, till thou come unto Gaza, and left no substance for Israel, neither sheep, nor oxen, nor ass, for they came up with their cattle and their tents, and they came as grasshoppers for multitude, for both they and their camels were without number. And they entered into the land to destroy it. And Israel was greatly impoverished because of the Midianites. And the children of Israel cried unto the Lord, and it came to pass, when the children of Israel cried unto the Lord because of the Midianites. Now, we have here one of the many, many different times and examples where God allowed his people to be taken in subjection to another neighboring people. This was because it was often a punishment dealt to them because of their falling away and their serving of idols and standing away from God. In this case, it was the Midianites who were teamed up basically with the Amalekites. There was an alliance there, and they were basically using their towns, their country, everything, the crops that they grew. It was their personal grocery store where they didn't have to pay. They have a great army. The Bible tells us that they were without number, and even their camels were without number. You can imagine, the saying goes that an army marches on its stomach. If you aren't feeding your soldiers, they're not going to be able to be very effective. They're not going to be able to go very long. So they were coming in and they were plunging. They were taking whatever they wanted. They were just leaving. The Bible describes it as if they were coming in as grasshoppers, just taking everything from the crops that were grown. No sooner than these plants would spring up, that they would be plucking whatever fruit it was off of the vine and taking it straight away. So you can imagine now the people, well, they're starving. They have nothing to feed their families because every time they get a little something and it's almost ready, these Midianites would come along. What do you think would happen to someone who would maybe try and stand up to them and try and stop them? Would you not want to protect what you own, what your crops of what you've put hard labor into, what you've grown, what you're going to feed your family, your children, and your wife? Would you not want to stand up and try and fight back against? Well, you can imagine that any person would meet a similar fate who tried to do so. They were mightier than them. They were men of war. They would have been slain there. This goes to show these are the kings of the people who have been sending their men out and giving them full reign for 7 long years. So all these actions alone, we can agree that this would be, as the leaders of the people, it is time to put this problem to an end. They've taken out their armies, and now they have the leaders who would have been giving the orders by this from all this pillaging and stealing and all the murders that would have taken place during these 7 long years. They can now put a full end to it. Now Gideon is God's chosen judge, and he's charged him to dispatch of the Midianites. He's been giving him very specific plans from the start of how he's going to lead the people to revolt against the Midianites. The time has come. He's been giving him very specific instructions on how he's going to do that, and now he's close at hand to the end of this task. By God putting this authority over him, he has Now God's given authority as the judge of Israel, and he is qualified to go ahead and act out these charges against them. Now, if you'll remember, he's captured these kings and he's brought them back to this specific place. Now, he could have killed them the moment he got them in his hands. They could have been killed, even if it wasn't Gideon personally. If it was one of whoever of his men got to them first, they would have had great motivation to dispatch them post-haste. Now, these towns that had ridiculed Gideon and not given him substance in the bread to continue after, he promised them, as they mocked that he had yet taken the kings in his hand, he promised them that he would return with them in hand. That's one of the reasons they're still alive, is to be a visual example to these people that God has given him victory in his task that was set before him, that they had such great disbelief that he wasn't even going to capture them, that they were too far ahead. He would never find them. They would make it to friendly places where they could escape, and they would never be taken. One of the reasons they're still alive is because of this. The next reason of why they are still alive is for their confession. Go back to in that verse 8, one of the first ones we read. As Gideon begins to question them of the manner of the men that they killed. Now, we read over in chapter 6 about how many of the people of Israel were running and going away. They were hiding in the hills and the mountains and strongholds and places where they could maybe take their families and have a little bit of a hidden defense there. And if you look at the areas surrounding of where Tabor is, it's a mountain that goes up. It's very like cone dome shape. Easy in sections actually climb, and you could actually make in those areas a little bit of a camp or something. It's not just the sheer side of a mountain. The landscape there is interesting that way, where you can easily see how these people would be able to make these places there and hide. But when he questions them in verse 18, then he said unto Zeba and Zalmunna, what manner of the men were they whom we slew at Tabor? And they answered, as thou art, so were they. Each one resembled the children of a king. And he said, they were my brethren, even the sons of my mother. As the Lord liveth, if he had saved them alive, I would not slay you. So now we show here that now it's even much more personal for Gideon here for taking these men and dispatching them. They had personally been in part and ordered the killing of even those who were Gideon's brothers. And now the Bible is very specific in Gideon's response. Had it said just they were my brethren, there's many places in the Bible, even the way we talk nowadays. I'll say to Mike, I'll call him brother Mike. We'll have that relationship back and forth, even though we're not brothers by birth, but we may talk that way. But Gideon goes there. He makes sure that you today know, the kings know, and everybody standing around here hearing of this judgment that's taking place, they were his brethren, but not in just the familiar sense, but also even of his mothers who are born of him, of his very own blood brothers who they had killed. He says that had this not gone, he might have even found mercy for them there, and maybe they would have even been first. Maybe they would have had not been killed in this execution. Now, when they tell him and describe the men that they had killed there, they almost throw this flattery and this compliment. I find it fascinating the way they say they compare them as like goodly men, as the men of kings, of that they had some sort of noble recognition about them, as if even to they compared even as you, Gideon, looking as yourself as a son of a king. Now, this is certainly not going to get them out of trouble. I think they already understand of what their fate. There's going to be at this point, they know what's coming. So then what happens next is interesting. Gideon doesn't at first kill himself. He does in finality, that's what he does. It brings us to our next point, Gideon's son who is unable to handle the job. All right, James, I'm going to need you for help here. I think we need visual representation of this. I know coming up here you think you're going to be the son. Unfortunately, you're not. You're going to be Zeba. Come here. Thank you. Now, I would play the part of Zeba, and I would be the one who's executed, but then James would have to finish the sermon, and I don't think my notes are go ahead and get down on your knees there. I don't think my notes are clear enough maybe for him to take up and continue. All right. So can you picture this? Can you picture them in this location? And there would have been plenty of people around to hear all this. This is one of the reasons Gideon knew what they had done. Why else would he have these questions about the death of his brothers, the understanding? Remember, this is for everybody else around to hear. This is even in the most formal of courtrooms today. You got to list the charges. That everyone around has to have an understanding. Otherwise, it just looks like these men were killed, and you don't even have an understanding of why were they killed, and that's why it was important for us to go over how deserved this execution was. So these men, they're lined up here. There's a grand group around them. Gideon's army, the people in the area of where they are, everyone would have been interested in what's going to happen next. And what Gideon asks of his son, and in verse 20, he said to Jether, his firstborn, "Up and slay them." But the youth drew not his sword, for he feared, because he was yet a youth. And we have here, his father gives him these instructions of that he is going to slay them, but he can't do it. He can't do it because he's thinking about his age. He doesn't quite have the nerve. Now, we don't have a lot there on just this interaction between Gideon and his son, but you'll be right, it's a lot. With saying very little, it says a lot. First of all, it's very precise in the choosing of the words of it's not Gideon handing the sword to his son and saying, go ahead, you're going to be part of this, you're going to do it. It's very clear, and it lets us know there that it is Gideon's son, Jether. It's his own sword. He has at his side ready. Now, this can give us an idea of now how old he is, of whether or not this was something that he could have done. He is a young man. The Bible gives us that much. But at the very specific point of that, he has the sword at his side ready, that he's along with these soldiers, and he didn't just get here all of a sudden. He's been traveling with them, that he is of the proper age to be going out into battle, and he's going alongside with these other men. But even without experience of myself, and I can definitely say, I'm sure it is a very big difference between taking the life of someone in the middle of battle, where it is a killed or be killed situation, where they're well armed and just as able to take your life as you are to fight against them. It's a much different situation than to have someone before you who is probably bound, they're a prisoner, and to be acting out, taking a life in form of execution. And all these things you can imagine are going through his son Jether's mind here as he's been given. Can you just see him standing before her? Maybe he even has his hand on his sword. He's hesitating. Maybe he looks like a deer in the headlights of he can't even believe just after what his father Gideon has just asked of him to take these kings' lives. And many are probably thinking, why on earth is he even asking him to do this thing? This is something big. Now, early on when I was first beginning the study, I was discussing this chapter with Sarah, and that's one of the many benefits of having my wife there, as I can just bounce things off of as I'm studying, and I'll come in with something excited that I want to share. And as I begin to slowly explain the situation and about how this young man, Gideon's son, was asked to perform this execution, she began immediately, her sympathy went out to his son. We say, She began quickly. She was forming her opinions of that. This is something he should not have even been asked of to do. She's probably picturing. Maybe she was even picturing you, James, as a young man being asked. It's very common for us to immediately go to an example existing in our head. We think a young son, we go maybe someone in our family of brothers. So maybe she was even picturing you, James, being asked to carry it out at execution. Would you be interested in doing that? Neither would I. Now, so immediately she went out with Cynthia. But as I continued to share a little bit more and explain, I say, now it's of my opinion that he should have absolutely done it. And now you may disagree with me on that, but as we continue the message, maybe you'll feel differently. But I believe that he should have absolutely done it. Now, think of this. Think of that relationship between father and son. Now, a good father, it's not often that they will ask their son to do something that they don't already have something in their head that they are capable of, that is something that they can accomplish, that's something that they have trust and believe, that's something they can take care of, or something especially that they wouldn't do themselves. And we'll have in a couple verses, we'll have the proof that Gideon was more than willing to act it out himself. I think the probably way, we've probably all been in situations where we've had a mutual understanding with someone that we wouldn't ask them to do something that we wouldn't be willing to do. I've said before, using an example of this, at my work constructions, using these tall ladders to go up and perform some task up high. And I was doing it along with a coworker one day, and we were trading off and taking turns. Because when you're up on one of those ladders, it's a two-man job, and someone's the anchor at the bottom. And you want that person down there, and it gives you that much more reassurance that you're a little bit more safer up there because someone has a steady hold. I'll tell you one thing that I hate to see is I look down and they're looking at their phone with one hand on the ladder. I've seen that before and I don't like it. No, but me and this person, we were going back and forth and we were trading off. We were performing a task. We had a number to do. I'd go up, he'd hold the ladder. I'd hold the ladder, he'd go up. We were both back and forth performing this task, and we had understanding that we were both more than willing to go up, and we were sharing the load. Because why would it make any sense for someone to hold the ladder all day and someone to go up and be doing all the work? It has to be two people, but not someone has to be all the anchor. And now, there's plenty of people who have no interest in going up there. But you know what? That at this day, at this moment, this is the task before us. This is what we're being paid to do. So everyone's got to take their turn up on the ladder. That gives you an idea of just there. I believe there is a understanding between Gideon and his son here. He's not asking him to do something that he's not capable of. But in the moment, he freezes, he wavers, and he can't do it. He probably takes a stop. He probably, more than anything, I remind you, everybody's watching. Everybody's standing around. I can only imagine after the moment, the freeze, and he's asked to do this, and he probably just wants to fade into that background after he's asked of this moment that he has placed in his hands, that he can't continue, and he can't perform this task. I'm going to have you sit on the front here. I don't want to make you down there all the time. I might need you again, so don't go far. Now, why is this so important? Why is it so important that Gideon gave his son this opportunity to be involved in this, let's not sugarcoat it, this gruesome task? Everything going off in your head right now is probably saying, this is not something a father should want their children involved in. This is the line of work, though, that God has Gideon involved in. And growing up, it's a natural progression that as someone who has the experience, it's much easier for you just to continue doing everything yourself. It's continuing to do everything for yourself. But in the position as a father, you have these sons surrounding you, you grow up, and you're going to have not one, not 10, but you're going to have hundreds upon thousands of opportunities to let them do something Let them learn and let them grow. When maybe it's something that they're going to fumble with at doing the first time, it's going to be something that it's going to start difficulty because they lack the experience, when it's something that you could have stepped in and done in 10 seconds. Now, also at work, this is something I sometimes have a hard time with when I am teaching somebody who's a little bit newer than myself to do something they haven't done. My head ever since is, we're trying to get this done as quick as possible. Let me just step in. I can do it faster. And that's bad leadership. I find I'm robbing them of the opportunity to grow. I'm robbing them of the opportunity to go further. Somebody was once patient with me. Somebody once let me make the mistakes and fumble with it and let me grow up in. And if I don't return the favor, I'm robbing somebody of the opportunity to grow. That's just one of the many ways I've come and experienced that. You've probably also had moments in time where you've let someone, you were teaching somebody something, and you have to have a little bit of patience. It's going to be a little bit great. You're going to watch them. They're not going to do it as well as you could because you've probably been doing this thing for a long time. He's giving his son an opportunity to grow. He's giving his son an opportunity to be involved in this important moment in time. He has an opportunity there, but he can't do it, and he fades into that background. So what happens next? Now, his son had the opportunity here. Here's where this pays off for the future. His son has the opportunity to then be part of something that all these people surrounding him, in the eyes of him carrying this, if he would have carried out this task and executed, all of a sudden they're seeing him as somebody who could be a future leader, somebody who can do the hard job, somebody can act it out. Now, as the judges of Israel go, it's the judges of Israel, it's a position, it's not hereditary, meaning that it's not just something that the father and the son and his son and son, and it goes through the time. It was neither also an elected position. It was something that was, God chose this leadership almost howbeit it would seem often random of how God may have chosen these leaders and pulled them out of these different areas to be his man that he would set up as a leader in a time of crisis for his people as this judge. But just because it's not something that's guaranteed that his son becomes the next judge of Israel, it is an opportunity for him to step into the service of God. We do have a few examples of judges of Israel who had their children who worked beside them. If you real quick, if you turn to 1 Samuel in chapter 8. I think I found where that paper came from. Don't worry, I'll find 1 Samuel. We were there for quite a while. It should be pretty fresh in the seam of my Bible. All right, so in chapter 8 of Samuel, in verses 1 through 5, here's an example. And it came to pass when Samuel was old that he made his sons judges over Israel. Now the name of his firstborn was Joel, and the name of his second Abiah. And the name of his second Abiah, and they were judges in Beersheba. And his sons walked not in his ways, but turned aside after lucre, and took bribes and perverted judgment. Then all elders of Israel gathered themselves together and came to Samuel unto Ramah, and said unto him, Behold, thou art old, and thy sons walk not in thy ways. Now make us a king to judge us like all the nations. But the thing displeased Samuel when they said, Give us a king to judge us. And Samuel prayed unto the Lord. Now you're probably thinking to yourself, Zane, you just gave us a terrible example of this. You said you wanted an example of some sons serving under the father who was a judge of Israel and joining in that practice. You gave us an example of people who weren't just judges. They were taking bribes and they were acting out perverted judgments in the sons of Samuel as he's getting older. I say, yes, this is an example of bad judges, but yet they were still part of the work, and it's a terrible thing of the way that they of the way that they acted against the ways that God had set up for these judges to behave, and the way that the example of their father Samuel had set before them. Yes, it's an example of some bad judges, but it's still those who were in the work, and we could preach a whole message on his sons here. It breaks my heart to read this passage. When I read this, I see a couple of sons who had the opportunity to be a great blessing to the people of Israel and a blessing to their father in his old age. We're in the chapter of 8 of 1 Samuel, and then we get a whole few more chapters in a whole nother book of Samuel having to continue to put the heavy load on his shoulders and continue the work because his sons were a couple of lousy judges and of no help. It breaks my heart that they robbed him of the opportunity to be dependable people he could lean on in his old age and enact as just judges. Let me give you a little bit of a better example. Judges chapter 10, just over a couple, so you can see that this is a little bit ways in the future from Gideon and his family. In Judges chapter 10, in verse 3, and I'll read till 5. And after him arose Jair, a Gileadite, and judged Israel 22 years. And he had 30 sons that rode on 30 ass colts. And they had 30 cities which were called Havajer unto his day, and which are in the land of Gilead. And Jair died and was buried in Kaman. And we don't have a lot about this family, but the visual of his sons, his 30 sons, riding around on these 30 donkeys and being a part of the service that he enacted for the people and for God, it's something that I take a little bit more pleasant in thinking about rather than the failure of Samuel's sons. Now let's go back and be back in the book of Judges in chapter 8. Now we'll zero in on the final act of this moment. Gideon does the job himself. Then Zebah and Zalmunna said, Rise thou and fall upon us, for as the man is, so is his strength. And Gideon arose and slew Zebah and Zalmunna and took away the ornaments that were on their camels' necks. I need you back. So have in your heads, Gideon asked his son to enact the execution. He was unable to do so. A few awkward moments in between have probably passed. And then, who speaks up? Old Zebah and Zalmunna. There's probably a moment where no one was saying anything, and then all of a sudden this is what they say. First, to remind you that in his son, he says, Up and slay them. And they go ahead and answer back after this time to Gideon, and they say, Rise thou and fall upon us, for as the man is, so is his strength. Please, thank you. Go ahead. Back on your knees. This is the request they make. They say, Gideon, do it yourself. Now, there's a couple reasons why they may have had motivation to ask for this. One is for, as being kings, even until death, they would have viewed themselves as with a certain amount of honor, and in their heads, it would have been a more honorable death to be executed by the person as Gideon in the position he was, rather than a young youth. So one reason it's a thing about pride. It's a thing about honor. The second we take from their comment they make. They say, for as the man is, so is his strength. Now, here's where we get to of the process of going ahead and beheading someone. It takes a great deal of effort and strength to go ahead and get that head off, especially on the first try. Beheading is something that throughout history was done in a few different ways. Eventually, the French modified it. They used the guillotine, which was the most quick and the most swift option to do so.
and I'm sure for the person go ahead and having this judgment passed on, I'd prefer the guillotine over anything else. If you're going to use an axe, even it's going to be less sharp than a sword. Even the sharpest axe isn't going to be as sharp as a sword, and it's going to have a wider and more blunt blade to it. So you may think, I want that axe, I want the power behind it. If it has to be done, make it fast. And that would actually take, with the blunt force, it could take multiple attempts to complete the process. With a sword, you have a little bit more. It's longer. That blade is longer than an axe blade. There's a little bit more room for error. Can you imagine being the guy who has to be beheaded and how many of you have ever taken a swing at a piece of wood with an axe and you missed, but you kind of nicked it by a little bit? Can you imagine having to get that axe blade into your shoulder? And then, yeah, exactly, terrible. So if it's me, if the guillotine hasn't been invented by the French yet, the sword is a much better option. So they say take this sword. So that brings us to our second of why they may have preferred Gideon rather than the youth. Think about strength. Think about Gideon is at his prime. He's a stronger man. Now, between myself and James, which one of us do you think is stronger? And we'll be close. No one has to be embarrassed. I'm probably going to be a little bit stronger than James is just because I've had more developed in my muscles and use the thing. So go ahead and raise your hand. Would you rather, if it has to be done, be headed by myself or by James? Me. So one person. We got one taker. Don't feel bad, James. Don't feel bad. Now here's the thing. Now I'm using us so I don't have to name any other person, and they don't want to have to go to that. I'll put that on myself. All right. So in like minds, they may have preferred. Let's get Gideon to do it, and it's probably going to end that much quicker. This young man who is already having second thoughts, how much effort is he going to put into that swing? How well is he going to be able to accomplish this? So you can see the motivation there is to have Gideon perform the job rather than this youth. You can sit down again. Thank you. Given with these two reasonings in our head, one as a matter of pride, an issue of how they think about us, and the other of the ability to accomplish in the most swift and quick manner. If you're going to have to die, make it quick. Now, Gideon does it himself, and then we have the following verses. We see the people rejoicing, and they're rejoicing over the vanquishing of their enemies, even so to the point where they say, we want to make you king, Gideon. We want to have you be the new ruler over us. Now, if you go to verse 35, still in 8, that brings us to the conclusion of all this. This is the after effect, the unattended consequences for a lot of what has taken place here today. Time has passed by. Gideon has lived his life. He's made some mistakes. We'll get into those in the afternoon. But the end result after all this, after all Gideon has done for the people, in the end, once he is dead, he's passed away, he's now gone. In verse 34, and the children of Israel remembered not the Lord their God, who had delivered them out of the hands of all their enemies on every side. Neither showed they kindness to the house of Jerubbaal, namely Gideon, according to the goodness which he had showed unto Israel. If you remember, Jerubbaal is the name that was given to him at the beginning of, in chapter, I believe it was in 6. It's the name that was given after he destroyed the idols in the altars of Baal. His father gave him that name. No kindness and no after Gideon's death, after his time spending judging Israel, and the people almost immediately after turning from his death, they had already been wavering during the time of his life when he was alive. But once he's gone, he's like the last thread holding on to things. And then once again, they find themselves in the same exact position they were those 7 years before God gave them into the hands of the Midianites. And now all the people have turned away and they're worshiping idols again, and they're worshiping these other gods. And the house of Gideon is all but forgotten. No one is even around to show them the kindness and what, even though all he had done so much. That brings us back to narrowing in on Jether, his son, and that potential that was there for him to follow in his father's footsteps, not necessarily as a judge of Israel, but as someone who God could have used and been next in line to still have the family and the people a remembrance to combating against these evils that his father had done so long ago in destroying their idols and their altars to Baal. With him gone, there is no one to lead the people. They turn away to other things. Now, go ahead and hop over into chapter 9 real quick. I'm going to try and streamline this as quickly as possible because I have to give you a glimpse into the future of this family. In chapter 9 in verses 5 and 6. Now Gideon took to himself during his lifetime many wives and one concubine. At this point, he had 70 sons. That's not even counting whatever daughters he may have had, but he had 70 sons. And of the concubine, this one son, his name was Abimelech, and he was a very evil man. And this is what he did. He went to the people, and he decided he was going to set himself up as a ruler over the people, not as a judge, but he viewed himself more as a king. And they were more than happy to let him do this. They gave him seed money and silver, and he went and he basically hired out a bunch of mercenaries and thugs, and this is what he did with those men. In verse 5, and he went unto his father's house at Ophrah, and he slew his brethren, the sons of Jerubbaal, being 70 persons upon one stone. Notwithstanding, yet Jotham, the youngest son of Jerubbaal, was left, for he did himself, and all the men of Shechem gathered together, and all the house of Millo, and went and made Abimelech king by the plain of the pillar that was in Shechem. This is what Abimelech did. He was that black sheep of the family, the one who was born of a concubine. This terrible mistake by Gideon himself comes back to cause great harm upon the family, where he gathers together all those sons, including Jether, and he executes them all one by one. Now, once again, by the mention upon this one stone brings us to exactly how it was enacted. This doesn't mean that one by one they went out and these men he hired, that they were killing these sons one by one wherever they found them. This means they gathered them all up together in one place and upon one stone, one by one, killed them all. How horrible. How terrible this man, this half-brother to all the rest to this family, and he killed them all and dispatched them. And he, like I said, he viewed himself as a ruler of the people, that to like a king. So what happens when you want to go ahead and seize a throne? You have to get rid of all those who may have been qualified as the next line, and that's exactly what he did in dispatching and killing of all of his brothers. I can only wonder how things might have been different had Jether, Gideon's son, had enacted this task set before him. How different his life may have been. And I believe we can look in our own lives and that we can go ahead and we can check how many opportunities to serve the Lord that we've let go ahead and slip by in our fingerprints. And maybe you won't find yourself with such extreme consequences as a family that's completely, and a people that's completely turned away from God to idol worship, and someone comes along and dispatches of the entire family, but you will, rest assured, find yourself with consequences for letting these opportunities to be part of God's work to come by. When you remove yourself from God's service, you open the door, two things are going to happen. Number one, you're going to miss out on the blessing that is there. You're going to miss out on the blessing that it is to be used of God and the things that happen in that place. Now, the second, you're going to open yourself up to some form of evil that's going to come along and it's going to snuff you out. It's going to come along and it's going to, if you remove yourselves completely and you fall away, it may happen a little bit at a time, and pretty soon you may find yourself a real long way from that first opportunity to go ahead and stand in the gap somewhere and serve the Lord, and something's going to come along and be a poison to you in your life. Now, you may imagine, as I've gone over, as I've studied this, as I've given a lot of thought on these different chapters and the different parallels that I've gone ahead and put on myself, let this scripture be something of a guidance to me to not follow in the footsteps of some of these mistakes that happen. Let it be no secret that it's the desire of my heart to serve the Lord in whatever opportunities He brings along to me. And now I'll also admit to you, there have been times when certain opportunities I've let fade away, just as Jephthah's son Gideon. Now, God's certainly not asked me to go ahead and act out as an executioner. I'm thankful for that. But other things that I have let away. And in the same manner in your lives, if you let these things pass by, they will be a detriment to you in the future. At this time, I'm going to ask Brother Jackson to come forward with a song of invitation. I realize that this is something that